Hi, everyone. As we wrap up the school year, I want to help you understand some of the terminology that's being used in the news right now. Um, it would surprise me if you're not aware of the riots happening all across the country, the protests like the one here in San Luis Obispo on Sunday. This is a picture I took where perhaps you and I know many other teachers were present, just to share our voice, our concern, our love for, and our frustrations over not just the killing of George Floyd, a Black African American man from Minnesota, by a white police officer, but also just the general trend of racism, whether seen or not seen by you here in the United States. The first phrase I want to help you understand that you may be seeing on social media is Black Lives Matter. And the Black Lives Matter movement started as a reaction to the treatment of African Americans in communities all across the country by white, primarily white police officers. And typically that treatment would result in beating and killing. And whether you're aware of this or not, all around the nation, what we see, and because of many of the prejudices against African Americans in our nation, is that uh, all things being equal, if there are two people robbing a store, um, the one being white, one being black, the white person will very often be perhaps tackled to the ground, arrested, and put in a police car, whereas the African American person may actually be beaten or killed by a police officer. It also refers to people who perhaps weren't committing any crimes at all. Somebody out for a jog in their neighborhood, and because they're black, seen with suspicion or fear, which could result in violence against them and perhaps even the killing of them. Whereas a white person generally doesn't have to feel that same type of fear. And of course, I do not mean to exclude people of any other races or ethnicities. Simply trying to help explain to you what Black Lives Matter means. It means the lives of Black people matter. And there has been a movement in our country to respond with all lives matter. And no one has ever refuted that. Refuted means to disagree with. Even the Black Lives Matter movement does not disagree that all lives matter. The issue is, in our country, historically, the lives of whites have always mattered. And again, all things being equal in a criminal situation or otherwise, white populations have always been treated better than Black populations, Asian, Native peoples. We could go on and on. The Hispanic, of course, has the treatment by society, whether it be by officials or by people in neighborhoods, has never truly been equal, even if you yourself have never expressed any racism towards people different than yourself. So if you hear somebody reply with all lives matter, consider why they're saying that. Because the idea that all lives matter is true, but the bigger issue is Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter, we could extend to minority lives matter. So as you see those terms out there, hopefully you have a better understanding of what they mean. I saw signs this weekend definitely calling for getting rid of police officers. Uh, and some of you might be confused by that. Some of you might even know or be related to police officers. Uh, there's many people out there that feel as if they are not treated fairly by the police. I myself, yeah, I grew up poor, but I did not grow up in oppressed class. And an oppressed class means I did not grow up feeling like the police were staring at me. I've always had nice short hair. I've always been a nice kid. And so uh, while I didn't grow up wealthy, I certainly grew up not living in fear that walking down the street might cause judgment against me. I did have friends who were not white who absolutely shared those feelings with me when I was young. And they would share with me, and some of my friends still do share with me, that they feel as if when they walk down the street, the police are far more likely to pull over and ask them questions. They feel as if they're far more likely to be pulled over on the highway for tickets or traffic infractions. And there are many studies that indicate that what they're feeling is the truth. I have a difficult time Um, Not understanding it, I do understand it. I have a difficult time putting my head into their space, or as the saying goes, putting their shoes on my feet, because I, it's never happened to me. The closest I can come to is when I was in Uganda, walking down the streets with a couple of friends, being the only white people. I absolutely felt and saw people staring at me, and it made me very uncomfortable. But I never felt the issue of mistrust that many Americans feel when walking down the street. And so when people are saying, get rid of the police and defund the police, uh, these are people that are empathizing and understanding that there are ethnic and socioeconomic groups in our country that do not feel as if the police treat them fairly in all situations. So that's where that phrase comes from. Another sign I saw said, silence equals violence. And you may be wondering what that means. And that kind of goes along with the term anti-racist. There are many people that will say, I'm not a racist. But when they witness racism, perhaps they don't do anything about it. And absolutely that happens at Laguna Middle School. Many of you watching know that you've heard things in class, or you've heard about things that have happened on school. And maybe because of fear, or because you didn't know what to do. And by the way, that's okay. You didn't know what to do, you just didn't speak up. And then that poor student next to you, or in the hallway, or somebody getting a drink of water, they had to go through their day feeling terrible, feeling oppressed, feeling marginalized by the students who made fun of them. The silence equals violence idea is saying that if you, the witness, don't speak up, violence against the victim may occur, that you have the power to change something. And I believe all human beings have the power to change as much as they possibly can. So the other phrase out there, anti-racist, going along with that, simply refers to the idea that it's not just okay to say, I'm not a racist, that the plea is for you to be an anti-racist, meaning to speak out against racism, to act out against racism when you see it, whether that mean you confront it directly, speak to a teacher, speak to an adult, speak to a store attendant. When you see something that you know in your heart and your gut just isn't right, to do something about it rather than stay silent. The other thing that, of course, we're seeing in the news is rioting. And it's so difficult to understand rioting if you're not that angry. And we can argue that there are certain people rioting for the wrong reason. I don't want to get into that. What I want to get into is the idea of, why would people riot? They riot because they don't feel heard. They're angry. They're upset. Now, again, there are people rioting right now that they're angry, but their actions don't match the cause that they're standing up for. And that's a different conversation. But when you see somebody so angry that they're smashing in the windows of a car, or smashing in the windows of the store, no, that's never okay. Nobody's agreeing that that's okay. But we have to examine, what are the possible motivations? Is that person spent a life feeling racist sentiments toward them, hearing racist terms, and their anger is just lashing out? This is not the first time that's happened, even in my lifetime. Um, I'm in my late 40s. Those of you with parents kind of around my age, or adults, ask them about the Watts riots, which happened before I was alive. Ask them about the Rodney King riots. Ask them about the riots after the O.J. Simpson case in the 90s. That this has happened before. And each time it settles down, but it doesn't settle to the point of solving. It settles where people just boil up their feelings until it happens again. So if we come back to the term anti-racist, perhaps future rioting, that anger inside of people, they just don't know how to get it out except through rioting. Perhaps we can solve those issues by having conversations, by being anti-racist, standing up for those that an injustice has been dealt to. And lastly, I'll end with nonviolence. I did not see any signs advocating for nonviolence. I did not see any advocating for violence, I'll say that. But nonviolence is promoted by some of my heroes, Bishop Desmond Tutu. We've got Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and of course, Mahatma Gandhi, is a principle that stands for using love rather than hate. Violence is an act of hate. It's anger. It comes from somewhere. Smashing in a store window is not going to make people listen to you perhaps the way that you want. Dr. King would say that nonviolence, it takes practice, it takes love, and it's far more difficult than violence. That when you see injustice, stand up for it. Don't get angry, don't punch somebody. You know, you could of course separate the maybe people that are in combat, but stand up for what you believe in with love. Speak from your heart, speak from what you know is correct, speak with the effort to promote peace rather than violence. And that's how you make people listen in a way that will move society forward. So I've covered a lot here today. Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, different views on the police, silence equals violence, the term anti-racist, which has been in the news a lot, why rioting happens. And of course, I hope you can follow with me that it's anger from perhaps an oppression that I can't fully understand, and the term non-violence. So as you begin to have conversations with your families, I hope that you're more informed. Please make up your mind on where you stand on all of these issues, but just know that this is where many people are coming from. I send nothing but love to you, and as you go into your future, just know that there's so much more out there than you or I, regardless of our race, ethnicity, socioeconomic group, are aware of. And the more we can talk to each other, the more we can communicate, the more that we can be anti-racist, the more that we can help to solve some of the problems that our society faces. All right, take care.